So the first thing we see on this spectrogram is the fricative S. We know that this is the fricative S because we can see the darker bands, which means that there is a sound of higher intensity. It really gets dark up there toward that 5,000 hertz mark. This is a voiceless fricative that is created by the vocal folds being adducted, meaning that they are together and vibration is coming out through the vocal folds. It's also created by the lateral part of our hard palate being contracted and air being pushed through a narrow constriction to kind of get that hissing sound. This voiceless fricative also creates turbulence, and we can kind of see that on the spectrogram just through that small kind of bit of aspiration. So our next sound is a combination of A and Y in the word say. So we can tell that this is a vowel sound because they have really clear band formants. So this is a voiced sound, which means again that the vocal folds are adducted, they are together. However, the tongue is not touching the hard palate, the lips are apart and the jaw is depressed. So then we have a kind of a stopgap in between the words say and bite where no sound is being produced at all. And then all of a sudden we have a sudden release in our stop plosive sound B. You can see a thin vertical spike indicating that we are releasing a sound very quickly. You can also see a small section before that big spike that you can kind of tell that there's something being voiced, and that's because with this particular voiced stop plosion sound, there is sound being created before the stop plosion is being made. So you can kind of see that on the spectrogram again. There's voicing before the release of the stop. And then this sound is created by holding sound pressure behind your lips and suddenly releasing it. And then we see co-articulation between the B and the I, which brings us to our next vowel sound, I. Again, very clear band formants. And this is a voice sound, again, meaning the vocal folds are together. But unlike our other A sound, the tongue is raised and more in the back of the mouth. And then there's a quick silent interval and then a sharp vertical dark band with the stop plosive T. So this is another stop plosive. However, this one is voiceless, meaning that the vocal folds are abducted, so they're apart and they're not touching. And this is created by airflow being constructed at the level of the teeth. So in terms of the articulators involved in the making of this sound, it's really at the level of the teeth. And the border of the palate is more contracted, and the oral cavity, the front of the oral cavity is more closed off. And then we have a stopgap in between the words bite and again. And then we see a clear formant, again, all of our clear formants in our vowels with the start of the word again, with the vowel A. But this one is different than our last vowel, A, because this is more of a short vowel. So the oral cavity is kind of situated differently to filter out this different kind of sound. And then we see a spike indicating the stop plosion of G. That's created more in the back of the throat than the other stop plosions that we've observed thus far. And the tongue has a lot of contact with the hard palate when creating this this stop plosion sound, and it creates kind of an obstruction of air. Like the other stop plosion sounds, but more so your tongue is pushed back in your oral cavity, so we can kind of build up this inner oral pressure and then release it in a stop plosion. And we can see this again with the vertical spike in the spectrogram. And then the letters A and I come together to make a single vowel sound, which can be seen through, again, the clear formants on the spectrogram. This time the tongue is slightly elevated, the oral cavity is open, and the jaw again is depressed. And then lastly, we have the nasal fricative N. This nasal sound is of a lighter color because when it comes to these types of fricative sounds like N or M, it tends to be more a quiet sound. There's less intensity there. The formants are dampened, and we can actually see a nasal murmur in the spectrogram. And this is created in the back of the oral cavity. The velopharyngeal port is open, which allows the sound to go through the nasal cavity.